We kick off this episode of the Amanda Show with a new development that is coming out of the Middle East Africa. So, since October last year, there's been a conflict, there's been a war, not a conflict, there's been a war with Israel and the Palestinians. Israel is looking to get rid of Hamas. Well, that's not, I don't want to delve into that whole thing now. What I want to discuss is that back in May, when Israel wanted to go into Rafah, and the whole world was saying, no, don't go in, don't go in. Israel insisted and said that Rafah is one of the strongholds of Hamas and insisted to get into the place, even if the whole world was saying, don't do this. Anyway, Israel did it. And once they got into Rafah, they took control of the entire border between Gaza and Egypt. Now, this border, that's what I'm talking about because Egypt is an African nation. So whatever happens up there still affects the rest of us. Right in this area, there's something called the Philadelphia Corridor, if I'm not mistaken about the name. And this was when Israel and Egypt reached a peace settlement in the 1970s under US President Carter. This corridor was one of the places that Israel relinquished control over. So Israel said, you know what, we are going to step out of this place so that Egypt will have diplomatic relations with Israel and also allow Israeli ships to pass through the Suez Canal. Now, this is called the Camp David Accords. So when Israel got into this place in May, the whole world was saying, look, I'm sorry, the whole world was saying, look, Israel is violating the Camp David Accords because this is the reason that a peace exists between Israel and Egypt. But anyway, under Netanyahu, they thought it was a wise idea and they got in. Now, I'm talking about this now because a report came out this week in the Times of Israel, and this was from an Israeli official who spoke to the Times of Israel. And so he said that Israel is going to permanently station troops in that border between Gaza and Egypt. Israel is going to permanently station troops in this area, and it has the blessings of the United States. Who said this? An Israeli official to the Times of Israel. Listen, this war between Israel and Hamas slash the Palestinians has been a very educative moment for me. Two major things I have learned from this war is that number one, human rights doesn't mean anything to this world. Because the people who keep preaching human rights, who keep preaching equality, who keep preaching behave properly, are those who are supporting what we are seeing in Gaza. In my life, I have never seen such inhumane action. I know we read about it in history, these things happen, but this one is happening before our very eyes. And we are the generation we are the generation that were trained about the atrocities committed during World War II. And one of the things we were told in our schools and even within our social communication is that this kind of thing should not happen again. Yet, in front of everybody, what is going on in Gaza is happening, supported by the people who are telling the rest of the world human rights. So I learned this whole thing has taught me that human rights doesn't exist. It's just a card that certain people play when they are not getting their way, or when they want to force their way into a certain conversation or a certain territory. That is where we see the whole human rights things. Because tell me, there is no bigger violation of human rights than what we are seeing in Gaza. You may argue, because right, I know this is a very touchy subject. A lot of people have things that they say, oh, Hamas started it, and some people say, well, Hamas is a result of what of Israeli policy to the Palestinians for decades. All those things. See, I'm not taking sides anywhere. All I'm saying is that we can all agree that it's not okay to kill children. I'm seeing children with their limbs blown off. I'm seeing toddlers dismembered with bombs. I'm seeing parents carrying their children in plastic bags. This thing is not okay. There's no how you want to spin it. We can all agree from a humanitarian point of view, as human beings, at our core, in our essence, we can all agree that it's not okay to kill children. It's not okay. So that's one thing that I have learned with this Israel and Palestine, this thing that is going on since October last year. That's one thing I have learned. Another thing I have learned is that do not be weak. Don't be weak. You see the reason why nobody can try nonsense with Russia? No matter how much they don't like Russia, no matter how much, like I think that was sometime last year. A Polish official from the Poland government. He said he tweeted, I can't, it's your language, but I may not pronounce it properly, but mostly like Russia, like in essence, he said that Russia must be destroyed. They may have the intentions to destroy Russia, but they cannot destroy Russia because Russia is strong. It's the same thing that is helping China. No matter how you want, you say, oh, China is a threat to our global hegemony. China is the reason we're not the sole world power, blah, blah, blah. You can get angry at that, but you can't do anything per se against China. Why? China is strong. The same thing that is protecting North Korea. How yes, they just throw sanctions at North Korea. They've been living with it for decades anyway. So what am I saying? Don't be weak. And I'm saying that for us in Africa. Because if it was a strong nation that was bordering Egypt and Gaza, if Egypt was a military powerhouse on a global stage, Israel would not have so blatantly come out to say they are taking control of the border. You would, because you would think you know if it's a feared nation, there are certain things you will not do. If it was China that was bordering Gaza, would this kind of thing have happened? At least United States would have spoken to Israel, but no. So I'm saying this for we Africans that no matter how much people say human rights and freedom and democracy and tell the whole world this is how to behave, at the end of the day, when you take your time to look at the policies that these so called people are pushing around the world, there's no bigger violation of human rights than it. So I'm saying this to we in Africa. Let us learn that the major way that we can preserve ourselves, the major way we can preserve our societies and our existence is by being strong. Nobody has respect for weak nations. And I'm not just saying it just because of Israel and United States and the rest of them. I'm also saying it to other countries that may think that, oh, these ones are our friends, like Russia, China. Nobody will play with a strong nation. But when you are weak, as many nations in Africa are, nobody takes you seriously. They'll do with you as they please. So now that I've said that, I want us to now take a closer look at this news story that's just coming out. So apparently, like I said in the beginning of this segment, apparently Israel is not going to leave the border between Gaza and Egypt. This is clearly in violation of the Camp David Accords. What is the Camp David Accords? So, Israel and Egypt had a war in the several decades ago. They had a war and they went to war. I said they had a war. They went to war several decades ago. And one of the things that arose from that is that the whole world said, you know what, we need peace. And United States under Jimmy Carter, if I'm not mistaken, because it was in the 1970s, under Jimmy Carter decided let's bring peace between Israel and Egypt. And so they came to a conclusion and if an arrangement for peace, which is the Camp David Accords. In the Camp David Accords, Israel was going to withdraw from Sinai, and then in return, Egypt was going to establish diplomatic relations with formal diplomatic relations with Israel, and not only that, it was also going to allow Israeli ships pass through the Suez Canal. And so this is what led to the peace that we've had between Egypt and Israel today. So when Israel went into Rafah, in back in May, the whole world was yelling about this whole Camp David Accord. So many of us, including myself, just assumed that once Israel is done doing what it wants to do with Hamas, it would leave the border between Gaza and Egypt so that things can continue. But apparently, this news is just coming out now that Israel is going to be permanently, Israeli troops are going to be permanently stationed in this border. Now, many people, and this is with the blessing of the United States. Now, many people are wondering, so why is why is Egypt taking this? Because if this is a clear violation of the Camp David Accords and it's a clear violation of your sovereignty, why is Egypt taking it, sitting down? A lot of people have said, oh, because that's the president, El Sisi, that's the president of Egypt, is a puppet, blah, blah, blah. But I'm thinking that perhaps this is Egypt is keeping quiet about this because it doesn't want a wider war. That's what I'm thinking. Because if Egypt uses this as saying, you know what, we are breaking diplomatic relations with Israel, blah blah blah, it can trigger. We don't know how things, because right now the situation in the Middle East is very tense. So it's better to calm the whole thing than adding fuel to the fire. And who knows how wide this thing would escalate. Most of the leaders in the world do not want any war. But to me, the only people who are looking for war is Netanyahu's government. Netanyahu's government is looking for a war because clearly, I think this is my opinion. I think what he wanted to achieve in Gaza has eluded him because look at we are seeing it. If they say they are done with Hamas here, then they leave and go to this place. The next thing we see Hamas pops up here, blah blah. So right now it's clear that the whole project of entering into Gaza has failed. The reason why Israel entered Gaza has failed. They have not gotten rid of Hamas. Instead, what are we seeing? The rest of the world is getting mad at Israel, and rightly so. And rightly so. It's not okay to kill people, civilians, en mass like this. If it's military targets you're taking out, fine. We are seeing they're bringing out a whole school, killing 300 people, killing hundreds of people, and to remove four Hamas officials. You can't. Human life should mean something. Even if you want to persecute a war, human life should mean something. So clearly, like I was saying, this has shown that the whole project of getting into Gaza has failed. What they wanted to achieve, they have failed. So maybe Netanyahu, and right now, even if you look at within the society in Israel, Netanyahu is very unpopular. Even before this whole thing happened in Gaza and then Israeli troops marched into Gaza, Netanyahu was already having issues of corruption and this whole thing he wanted to adjust the judiciary system. He was already having issues in Israel before this thing escalated. Do you get me? So maybe this is a way to save Netanyahu's political face. I don't know, but based on the news that I'm seeing, it is Netanyahu that is pushing for war. He's looking for war. That is why he's been provoking, pushing, and punching Iran. That's the reason why he's doing those things. Hopefully, because he knows if Israel cannot face Iran. So hopefully, he's looking for how to draw the United States into the whole conversation to get a wider regional war. So, in the interest of peace, I'm looking at perhaps this is why the president of Egypt and the government of Egypt are looking away from some provocative actions that Israel is taking against Egyptian sovereignty. But even having said that, I just want to use this time to quickly look at Israel. It is not in Israel's interest. What Netanyahu is doing in Israel is not in Israel's interest. Never has there been a time, to the best of my knowledge, never has there been a time that public opinion is so turned against Israel like this. Never. And I mean not just public opinion in the rest of the world, like we in the global south, particularly countries like South Africa that went through apartheid. Uh, So countries like South Africa, we've known that the public opinion has been strong against Israel. But in countries in the West, like United States, Great Britain, Germany, France, we are seeing protests. We just saw the DNC had their it took place this week. Yeah, it ended on Thursday. The DNC took place this week. When that thing was going on, you saw the protests, pro-Palestine protests that were going on. This is the United States, the biggest funder of Israel's war, the biggest who supplies Israel with the most military equipment. Their citizens, their populations have turned against Israel. Talk more of the rest of the world. Do you understand? So it's what Netanyahu is doing is not even in Israel's benefit. But having said that, and I'm so knowing fully well where the world stands, we've seen the way they've been voting in the United Nations Security Council. We've seen all those things unfolding. Global opinion has turned against Israel because of what Netanyahu and his government is doing against the Palestinians. I don't know if Egypt's plan to calm the situation, which is the reason why Egypt has not been making strong stance against Israel with the way they are coming to the Israel. Because even sometimes you see that is the Israeli forces will shoot and Egyptian soldiers at Egypt's border will die. In this course of this thing, Israeli soldiers have killed Egyptian soldiers. Meanwhile, Egypt is not a part of the war. Egypt is not Hamas. We've seen it. We've seen Egyptian soldiers and even people injured with what Israel is doing in Gaza around that Egypt and Gaza border. So many people would have used that as a stand to take a strong stand against Israel. But I believe that Egypt is calming the situation because they don't want things to escalate. Having said that, I don't know how much we can hold the floods. Like I said, Netanyahu is looking for a wider war. This September, Netanyahu plans to address the United Nations General Assembly. I don't know what he wants to say. I don't know what he wants to tell the whole world, but I'm thinking that I'm thinking there may be a world war. I'm thinking there may be a world war. So Netanyahu is going to speak to the General Assembly just for formality because he wants to use the pretext and say, okay, I told the whole world nobody did anything about it, so I'm going out against Iran. Two times Israel has done really provocative things against Iran. Back in April, Israel um, bombed Iran's consulate in Damascus and killed officials. This one now, last month, in is it even beginning of this August or maybe in July, Israel at the inauguration of the new president of Iran, Israel bombed and killed a Hamas official who came to Iran, right? Killed a Hamas official in Iran, capital in the capital city. Now you can say, oh, it's Hamas, so it's fair game anywhere. You know, even if Hamas official, let's just say, is in Washington D.C., you cannot strike it. You cannot do that. You can't just so recklessly just bomb somewhere and kill a guest. Kill it. You can even if you want to kill Hamas official, fine, but do it outside. Do it maybe when he's in Palestine. Why didn't he do it in Qatar? Many of these Hamas officials they stay in Qatar. Why is he not bombing Qatar? Why is Netanyahu not bombing Qatar? Because he's looking for war with Iran. And I'm worried that this address he wants to give the United Nations General Assembly is just to say, all right, I told the whole world. I think that they are planning to do something against Iran. So that is why I'm wondering this move that Egypt has been trying to ignore Israeli aggression against Egypt for, for the duration of this whole thing. Is it really going to pay off? Listen, I just mentioned that clearly it looks like war is really coming. But what can we do to stop this thing? Because war is not in the interest of anybody, especially we in Africa. We are still battling what's going on in Sudan. We are battling what's going on in the DRC. We are battling all this banditry and pinch pricks terrorism activities that are going on in many countries in the Sahel region. So we know what it even with Ethiopia, even if they just put an end to the conflict that's going there, there are still some really hot spots. So clearly war is not in the interest of anybody, not just in Africa, but even around the world. We are seeing the way the global economy is going. If you add a global war to that, or a serious regional war like in the Middle East to that, people's incomes will just go up in smoke. So what can we do about it? Is what I've been asking. If you have any suggestions, let me know in the comments. But one thing that I'm thinking is that we can speak up against it, especially people who are in important nations like the United States. And I have quite a number of you who are watching me from the United States. You need to speak up against this. A lot of you are trying, but we need to intensify the efforts. Many of you watch me in the United Kingdom. Speak up against this thing because war is not in the interest of anybody in the world, except your plan is just to burn everything down, then build a new world based on what you want. Maybe you feel like you've been losing for a long time, so you might as well just burn everything down and build up a new thing based on what you want. Or war is not in the interest of anybody. Another thing we can do, we can reach out to our leaders now, not just speaking up on our shows and on social media and the rest of it. We can reach out to our leaders and tell them that they should not allow this. Write to them when they are going to the United Nations. Tell them they should take a strong stand. Not even no, because sometimes the United Nations, because you want certain diplomatic favors with certain countries, you may take a you may abstain in certain important votes. So things like this, we should reach out and say, take a strong stance against war. War is not in the interest of anybody. War is not in the interest of anybody. So I really hope that this fire that Netanyahu, not Israel, Netanyahu, because I know a lot of people in Israel are even speaking out against him. Even some people in the United States are speaking, and I mean government officials like Chuck Schumer. They are speaking up against. Was it Chuck Schumer? I think it was Chuck Schumer. Anyway, they are speaking up against him. But Netanyahu thinks that to preserve his political faith and his political standing, he needs to have a war. The world does not need a war. Another thing we can do is put it in prayer because at this point we need divine intervention. I believe in God. And I know that the prayers can do a lot of things. I've seen prayers work, and not just in my personal life, but even in my country and in relations with nations. So now is the time for everybody to take a strong anti-war stance because war does not benefit any nation, especially we here in Africa. So let me know what you think about Israel saying that they are going to permanently station their military at the border with Egypt and with the blessing of the United States. And even this whole thing that is looking like we may have a global war because of some people are looking to protect their political standing. Let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to this channel, and share this video with your friends and your family members so that we can reach more people across the world and Africa, as we are hoping and we are praying that we do not have a World War III.